All right. Good evening, family. Thank you all for joining us again for night number two of Help in a COVID-19 World. I am your girl, Dr. Shayna, one half of Beacon Institute, and my trusty second half is Dr. Rochelle Whitaker.
Good evening, everybody. I am so
We are
excited for tonight.
Yes, this is gonna be really, really good. Like we've been in the green room chopping it up with the fellas, and it's like this is going to be a fire conversation. So I hope you are ready, got your pen and paper. We had a few technical difficulties at the start, which is why we were running about 5 minutes behind, but we promise you we will give you all of your time tonight. We're not going to take anything from you at all. Good evening. So if you're in the chat box, just say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. We want to know who's watching with us and where you're watching from. Know that this is an interactive conversation, so we're always looking for you to give us feedback throughout the evening. So I'll introduce myself more officially. My name is Dr. Shayna D. Lewis. I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a professor. I'm a trainer. I'm an advocate, y'all. I am literally just a servant. And I'm so excited that this is one of the ways that I get to serve this evening through this platform. So, Dr. Tell me a little bit more about you.
So, again, I'm Dr. Rochelle Whitaker, educational psychologist, mental health therapist, parent educator, and author. I am an educator, and I am excited to hear what the men have to say because we don't often hear from men on this subject. So, I'm excited and I'm ready.
Yes, let's hop into it. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Beacon Institute, I don't know if we introduced what Beacon Institute was last night. I think we just got to talking.
Yes, I think so too.
So, Beacon Institute is an institute that Dr. Whitaker and I started a couple of years ago. We go way back, probably, I know over a decade and a half, I'm sure almost at this point, of working together. And we both went into private practice as counselors around the same time. I went first, and then she was
Mhm.
probably really close behind. So we became each other's support as on that journey. And what ended up happening was we just one day we're talking like, what kind of support can we provide to other clinicians who are doing the same things we did? And so Beacon Institute became the way, but it's grown into a training company that trains not just clinicians, but also educates the community on mental health topics as well too. So there you go, Beacon Institute, lighting the path to a better way, right? That's what we're
Yeah.
here to do. So thank you guys for being here. We have Houston in the house. We got some more Hockley, Texas in the house. Thank y'all for
Hey.
hopping in. Appreciate it. So tonight's topic, day two, is he needs help too. Y'all, this is probably my favorite conversation. It's one we don't have enough, and I'm so glad that we have two men who are willing to have the conversation with us tonight. So I'm going to pop off, let Dr. Whitaker go ahead and do her thing, and then we'll get back on into the conversation. Dr. Whitaker?
All right, guys. So let's talk a little bit about men and seeking help. So what we know is in a COVID-19 world, more men are being diagnosed with COVID-19. However, what we do know is the prevalence of men in mental illness is a lot less than women. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that men don't seek help or don't recognize symptoms. So the numbers are lower for men. But what we do know right now is that everybody is stressed. Everybody is worried. And we know that unemployment is at an all-time high. So when you aren't able to work, that presents itself as a stressor. And we know that for men, traditionally, in the traditional sense, they are the provider of households. That's part of their makeup. And so we know in that 5.2 million of people who have filed for unemployment in the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, that is proportionately affecting men. So let's get into it. Let me introduce our guest. Our first guest is Michael Dangerfield. He is a licensed professional counselor and a national certified counselor. He specializes in working with men, a grossly underserved population, to address their unique cognitive and emotional needs. He also works with women, couples, and adolescents who present for counseling to address a wide range of mental health challenges and issues. Michael has been featured in the Houston Voyage magazine and has participated in various panel discussions, web conferences, radio shows, and podcasts in the Houston metropolitan area, speaking concerning mental health awareness and the benefits of therapists. And the benefits of therapy. As a therapist, his aim is to assist clients in identifying and connecting the dots between their beliefs, behaviors, and the unique challenges they are experiencing. He uses cognitive behavioral therapy and or other solution-focused therapeutic models as a framework and session. Then we have Mr. Lenny J. Carter, who is the founder of True Circle, a digital health platform that connects those with mental health and social therapy needs to providers that can help families and individuals make safe, informed, and affordable choices. He was inspired to serve this market after his own struggle with mental health following the sudden loss of his mother, Barbara, in 2008. Faced with the challenges of finding a grief counselor, he understood the value of timely information and access to people with resources. While growing up in Brownsville, a neighborhood of Brooklyn, Lenny watched friends and neighbors struggle with substance abuse, destructive lifestyle, and mental health issues that could have been alleviated with timely access to information and caregivers. He is a two-time graduate of Stony Brook, where he earned a BS in business management and a master's degree in human resources. So let's welcome our panelists, Mr. Michael Dangerfield and Mr. Lenny J. Carter.
All right, I will bring the fellas on. All right, here we go. Are you ready?
How you doing? How you doing?
It's about to be good, though. All right. All right. Hello, Michael. Hello, Lenny. How are you this evening?
Doing great. Doing great.
How you doing? Hi. Thank you so much for being here. You could be doing anything on a Tuesday night, but you said it was important enough for you to join in this conversation. And you know what? Y'all are dressed in the same shirt. I love this.
Great minds.
Like, that is so good. And I almost had on a navy blue jacket. Like, we would have been a group. Almost. Yeah. I love it. But I'm so grateful that you are willing to have this conversation tonight. It is very important to talk about men and mental health. There's so many things that we could start with. But one of the things that I definitely want to make sure that we address is the fact that there's a lot of research and statistics, like Dr. Whitaker talked about, where men may seek therapy services less. It doesn't mean men experience it less necessarily in some respects, but they seek therapy services less. Can you think about, Lenny, as a man who decided to seek therapy, why is that? Let's just start with what's the cause of men not seeking the help that may be helpful?
I mean, that's the age-old question of just how we define ourselves as a man, how the society views us as men. Therapy is or can be seen as a sign of weakness. And when you're looking for help, we're the type of people as men where, you get in a car sometimes, you may get lost with where you're going, but sometimes we don't want to stop and ask anyone for directions. It's a similar concept. It's like, I got this. I've learned enough. I've seen enough in my life. I've seen other people's challenges and mistakes. So I should have enough knowledge to figure this out. And with that figure it out mentality, especially alpha men, leaders of households, men that kind of try to stay on their game, they don't want to seem weak. So the concept of actually going to therapy, stopping what you're doing, taking the time out and speak to someone, which is an industry predominantly ran by women, for lack of better terms, or headed by women, they don't always feel comfortable sharing that weakness to other women and other folks.
Got it. So this is about not wanting to show the vulnerability, that side that you feel like it's. And so perhaps there's a space that you've been taught that it was not okay to show those feelings. It was not okay to be vulnerable. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. And it's more cultural. I mean, it's not just a single space, it's a whole environment, right? Growing up in
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn, New York, the concept of going outside and showing weakness. If something happens to you and you cry, for example, now, someone may take advantage of you because you've shown that weakness, or they know they can get over you on you by continuing to take your lunch money, for example. So your
Got
environment
it.
may put you in a position where showing that weakness is a sign of vulnerability and danger in some cases.
Got it. Well, I want to read this quote for you that I found. I thought this was profound and appropriate for our conversation. It says, "We train soldiers and professional warriors and then expect them to be emotionally intelligent enough to open up when they need help. Worse, we expect them never to need help. We must bring vulnerability as a core principle of emotional strength into the framework of masculinity." What do you say to that?
It has value. There are a lot of points in that quote that highlight the deficiencies of where there's a gap between what we're expected as men to, or warriors to deliver in the act of
Mhm,
war, and
mhm,
separating that from who we are emotionally, and that we're not supposed to have feeling behind it. So the value in that was
mhm.
big, big.
Got you. Got you. Michael, what would you say to that? Did you hear that quote I just
I
read?
did. I did. It's interesting having served in the military myself.
Hmm.
I remember being in, and one of the first things they told us in boot camp was, "Hey, if it's not issued in your C bag, which is the big green bags you see, military
Hmm.
carry around, then it's not important." And at that moment, I
Oh,
was like, "Wait a minute, like." You
wow.
know, I'm barely 19, and I'm like, whoa. So you mean to tell me that if I have a family, if I have anything going on, that it's not that important? And that was kind of the message. And so I learned early on, that if I was going to be tough, and be able to deal with some of that stuff, I had to kind of suppress, some of what I felt, which is interesting because 15 plus years probably later, here I
Right.
am working, to kind of
In
turn.
this way.
Mhm.
Wow. If it's not in your sea bag, it's not important.
It's not important.
Like you don't get any clearer than that. Like this is everything else don't mean anything. This is
Yeah.
all of it. Wow. I definitely think that, the conversation of men and mental health is pivotal because men are a very important part of our community. And if we have men that are walking around wounded, emotionally hurt on the inside, broken to pieces because of whatever hurt, traumas, or pains that they've endured,
Mhm.
and never seek help, then what are we left with as a community, right? Like what, and so that's why I love having this conversation. So Lenny, I want to start with you since you have some lived experience in this space as a man seeking some help. Can you share with us your story and how it led you on the journey to seeking help, and what was that process like for you?
Absolutely, not a problem at all. I have a childhood journey that's unique in itself. Just growing up in the hood, parents being separated, single mom household, with my siblings, living close to my grandparents, and the family unit was strong. So I never felt like I lacked anything, especially love. So I grew up in a space where, as one of the youngest grandchildren, it was difficult for me to have a voice and always sharing how I felt, because it was older people always saying, "You're the baby." So as I got older, I suppressed a lot of feelings and didn't express those things because I didn't have anyone to talk to. And it became a point in time in 2008 where my mother ended up having an accident. She was on her way home from work, and on her way home, she fainted on a subway platform in New York City and hit her head. That caused her to go to ICU for 2 weeks unconscious. And I was at the hospital every single day, hours after hours, speaking to doctors, trying to figure out what's wrong. And then she ended up passing away. And that was kind of my breaking point. I've had other signs of struggling with my own mental health prior to that, but that was its point in time where, it was visible to other loved ones that I wasn't eating well, I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't as focused as I was prior. And those triggers actually was when loved ones gave me the nudge. That's actually kind of where True Circle was born, in the company that I own, because that was when the light bulb went off that the challenge doesn't start only with yourself. A lot of times other people can identify and recognize the struggles that you're going through. And it wasn't until someone else, actually a loved one, was a woman out of all cases, like we're talking about and having the conversation right now as men, just like women tend to make men's physical doctor's appointments to see their medical doctor. You know, there's times that, you know, women may recognize and say, hey, you know what, things aren't going right for you. Why won't you try, you know, something else? So I was referred and recommended to go to therapy. They were comfortable with going with me. And that introduction opened my eyes. I was an alpha male that felt like therapy wasn't going to be for me. And then that happened and I made it to therapy.
Got you. So what was your first reaction when it was she recommended, hey, Lenny, I'm seeing some things, maybe you want to get some help? What was your first response?
I don't have nothing to talk to a therapist about. You know? There's nothing for me to have a conversation about. I got this figured out. I'll figure it out other ways. But, you know, what do they want to visit in me that I can't figure out myself?
Got you. So what was the turning point for you from that moment to that thought to let's go?
It was the turning point of support. One, you know, really knowing a loved one was there for me. I wasn't going at it alone, right? You know, sometimes we have these thoughts in our heads and we let these feelings fester and other people don't know about it or know how to deal with it with us. So with that giving me an opportunity with the support of saying, hey, I'll go with you or I'll find a therapist for you. That's when it was like, you know what, you know, I don't have no reason to say no at this point. You know, they're giving me no option but to accept the help that they're offering. So at that point, it was just like, okay, let's make this appointment. Let me get in there for my first session.
Got you. So that support meant everything because you didn't have to do it by yourself. It doesn't sound like you were being judged. She was saying, hey, let's do this because it's going to help you feel better and be better. Got you. Very good.
Absolutely.
And I definitely want to come back to where that piece led you. But let me turn to Michael right quickly because, Michael, I know your work as a clinician, you specialize in working with men. What kind of things are you seeing right now in your work, especially as we relate it back to a COVID-19 world, that men are dealing with, struggling with, that they may respond like Lenny did? I don't talk to nobody. I'm all right. I can figure it out. What kind of stuff, what are men folk dealing with these days?
You know, so it's interesting, Shana, that some of what men are dealing with now has been the issue before. COVID-19 really just exacerbated it, right? So, and I think Dr. Whitaker said something at the beginning. One of the things that's been on highlight right now for men is unemployment. So, you know, and Lenny spoke to it, you know, being an alpha male, being the person to provide, being all of what we've been challenged to be as boys growing up into men, you run up against something like COVID-19 and you have absolutely no control over it. One of the things that brings a lot of men a sense of self-worth and self-esteem is being able to quote unquote provide. Now we know that word provide, you know, means a lot of different things and there's a lot of depth to it, but for the most part, you know, for a lot of people, it means bringing home the bacon, being able to pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. But what do you do when, you know, your job is snatched from you and, you know, you can't just go out there and then just immediately get another job? So a lot of what I see, you know, in therapy right now, interestingly, are men who are struggling with, man, you know, either they've gotten laid off or they're about to get laid off or they're concerned about not being able to provide. And so we're just processing some of that. Consequently, I guess for some men who are used to working and used to being out there providing, now they have to be home. And if they're in a family situation and they have, you know, mom and kids at home, you know, and they're not used to having to talk through some of those things, it's a lot more difficult. So another thing, along with us being, you know, brought up and being a man and going out and working, is you don't talk about how you feel so much, right? And so at a time like this, you know, when again, there's no control, like there's so many different emotions that men go through. For some reason, people think that men don't go through emotions. They do. We just don't, you know, we're taught to not show them on our face, right? So you're stuck in a place to where you can't go out, you know, you can't go out and just go and play ball, or you can't go out and work or do whatever you're used to doing to be able to, you know, relieve that expression, and you're actually having to stay home and then talk to wife, or deal with kids and all that becomes a whole nother challenge that men unfortunately are not really prepared for.
Yeah. So you said a mouthful there. So let me just pause. If y'all are just tuning in, you are watching Help in a COVID-19 World, Healing Everyday Life Problems in a COVID-19 World. We are on day 2 and we're talking about men and mental health. If you are on this line, you have questions for Lenny or for Michael, please put them in the chat box. And I want to turn right now because I know a lot of the people watching this are probably women with boys. Because we this is what we do. this is right up our alley. And I want to speak because I have a son too. And the thing that I think, because you talked about, you're taught, don't show your emotions, you can handle it, suck it up, or what if it's not in your sea bag, it's not important.
Yeah.
What are the things that mothers are maybe unbeknownst to us doing to our boys that is creating some of what the two of you are describing? The shutdown, I lose my job and I don't know how to deal with it, so I can't do the stuff I normally do, so I shut down. What are we doing? Talk to the mamas right now, because there's a bunch of them on the line with boys.
One of the things you have to do. Oh yeah, okay. Thanks, Lenny. One of the things that mothers have to be mindful of is not reinforcing some of that negative behavior, like you said, Dr. Lewis. It's boys are often told, don't cry, boys, that's not what we do, but honestly, at a time like this, things look very scary, so being able to be a platform to say, hey, son, it's okay to express your feelings. It's okay to express your emotions might be very healthy. I'm not sure how many mothers out there are actually, welcoming that kind of conversation as much as, they might just be, again, reinforcing, oh no, it's gonna be all right. It's just tough it out, or go and look out for your little sister, or go and do this and go and do that. Well, guess what? He got some feelings too that he probably needs to process. Right.
Okay, all right, Lenny, what do you say?
I would say, ask questions would be the biggest thing. I think that sometimes as parents, we get wrapped up in our own worlds. And as moms, and dads, we have a responsibility sometimes to check in with our children beyond what we're going through as individuals. Sometimes it's just we're trying to make it through the day. We're on our last leg. It's the end of the day. Things came a little crazy all day for us, and it's kind of like we want to get them into bed and have a moment to ourselves. And a lot of times they still had a day themselves. It may not look the same as ours. They may not go through the same struggles, but I have 2 boys, a 7 and 9-year-old. And for those 2 boys, those things are a big deal in their world, their 7 and 9-year-old world. So, really checking in and asking questions that will provoke answers that will lead to hopefully them expressing their emotions, because that's the way I try to teach my boys is, using ways to express their feelings and answering questions beyond the surface value of it. So if you don't ask, you'll never know.
That's good, Lenny. I'm actually on the opposite end. I have two daughters, 9 and 7. And so it's funny how society, and I'm also the baby of the family.
Wow.
It's funny
exactly. We're connected.
Yeah, right. Purple, so it's funny how society says that it's okay to be that way with women and girls. So it's not a problem at all for me to ask my girls normally, how was today? How's things going? Good is not an answer. Fine is not an answer. Let's talk about that. What was so good about it? But I love that this conversation, we're saying, all right, boys need that same thing. Boys really need a platform to be able to express what's going on inside, not just, nobody's bullying or nobody's bullying you at school, or they are, you're behaving right, all right, well, go ahead and get along.
Yeah. I mean, I love that because I'm a big proponent of question asking. My kids get tired of me. Like, Mom, you got another question? Then what I do, I ask questions. And I say all the time, Lenny, if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the right answers.
Correct.
True.
With grown-ups or with children. And so I think that's a beautiful space to begin with raising our boys by asking them about their feelings, asking them about how you're doing, asking them, how did you respond to that thing that just happened? Or how did you feel about that? What do you think about that? And getting them in a habit of actually talking, right? Because naturally boys are just, I mean, I got a son. He would rather sit and play video games all day than fool with me, talk to me, or any of the above if I let him. But I have to force the issue, right? I have to be the mama that's like, okay, no, look, cut that off. You finna look me in my eyes at least for a good 30 seconds, and we're gonna have a conversation in between these commercials or whatever it might be. But I mean, so if I was on the line, if you're on the line and you have sons, just comment about how do you engage or interact with your son to help promote his healthy emotional development, because that's what you guys are describing, is working to healthily help them develop emotionally in a healthy way. Because what we know numbers wise, while women and men may all experience different mental health issues, women are more likely to seek the help, men are not. But sometimes men's mental health issues may present themselves in a different way than women. Right. So we're going to call it something. So let's talk about depression, for instance. So when people think depression, they usually think sad, crying, under the bed, can't get out of bed, that kind of thing. That is a part of it. But in men, depression might look very different. It might look like anger, aggressiveness. It might look like, he's quiet or shut down. So what might be some of the other symptoms that may look different in men that we may just call, as the wife or the woman in the life, be like, well, you just, you don't want to talk to me. You're not calling it what it might actually be. So what are the things that we might be missing in our men folk that really might be indicators? Maybe he's depressed. What are some things that we might be need to look for?
I'll start with this one. Excellent. Thank you. I think loss of patience would be one of the top things for me that I would say goes unrecognized, right? Men can be temperamental when they're depressed. And temperament means a lot in the space of how women respond, especially if you're talking about a significant other or a family member, right? Most family members may deal with it better than a significant other because they tend to know that loved one longer, right? So they kind of move with the mechanics, whether it's a sibling, a mom, an auntie, but, they kind of move with the mechanics. But, a significant other may not recognize that, you go and you're in a relationship and the first time that male is depressed, you may not recognize that his patience isn't with you or lack thereof. It's with the process of information of what's going on. He may already be feeling down and out. And now the loss of patience of something simple may become a bigger deal. And I would, say that was one of the top things that I recognized within myself as well as other men. Okay.
Loss of patience. That's a good one. Michael, what would you add?
I would say probably fatigue or loss of energy. One of the things that you typically see men have, if he's healthy, is a lot of energy. We go, we go. We get to the point to where we start slowing down, and then we just seem real lethargic, or the motivation is gone. It could be a classic sign that there is some depression or some mental weight that's going on there. And of course, that starts to, like Lenny said, the frustration and the tolerance and the patience, all that stuff starts to dwindle, when you're just fatigued and your body is just, wore out.
Well, that's important to know, because when you think about depression, it is a chemical imbalance that happens here in the brain, right? Something has shifted in the way that we're able to think. And so not only think, but able to tolerate as well, too. I call it frustration tolerance. When we're doing well, it's long. Like you could do a whole lot and I could take a whole lot. But when my frustration tolerance is very short, especially if I'm in a space of heavy weight or I'm feeling depressed, the fuse is a lot shorter. You could just look. And it's a problem.
That's true.
So we need to call. So I think what happens is it just gets called he's an angry man, or he's, what I'm saying, as opposed to that being a mental health potential issue. We miss that. So he's just mad all the time. Well, that anger might be the result of something else, or he's not paying attention to me, even as it relates to, sexual behaviors and doing things around the house and motivated to do what you used to do, go play basketball or hang with the boys or whatever, and or just being locked up in a room all the time in the man cave. And that could all be signs and symptoms.
That's true. That's true.
That we're struggling with something greater than just he's mad. So the idea here is to help educate us on what it might look like. So you might be the person who like intervened in Lenny's life and said, right, hey, I'm concerned about you. Here's why. Maybe talking to somebody might help, right? So you got to know what you're looking for first is the thing. Now, here's the other thing, because folks often ask, like, what are the causes of these mental health issues? What are the what can be precursors to them? Now, one that we know as, you know, clinical folks, we understand there is a genetic predisposition to depression or any kind of mental health disorder. So when you think about generations of men, and I'm just talking about, and it could be on any side of the family, but we talk about generations of men who have potentially been mad, angry. He didn't want to fool with nobody. He held up in the room all the time. Never got We just called him mad, grumpy.
Yeah.
What happens to all those boys in the generations that come after him?
Mad, grumpy.
They got to replicate it.
Yeah. Yep. Just like his dad and his grandfather.
Yep. Yep.
And nobody calls it a potential mental health issue. It doesn't get called that. I'm big about calling the things that they are, labeling it correctly, so you can do something about it. So the way we reconcile what happens here or what's going on with somebody will determine what you do about it. If I call it a bad day, it was just a bad day. But if I call it depression, then it means I got to do something about it.
Absolutely.
Possibly.
Wow.
So what are some other causes? We got genetic stuff. What might be some other things that cause? Well, like even in your case, Lenny, you have your whole story is a cause, right? You said there was some stuff that happened as a precursor, but this was the thing that tipped the needle to the place where you really needed help. Can you describe what that was like? Because we get the genetic piece, but stuff happens in life too that can be a precursor.
Absolutely. The cultural side of it all. So like you said, you know, there's a biological side to this all where, you know, there's a chemical imbalance and just a physical side to it, but just the cultural side of life and the burdens that come with one, pointing out inner cities throughout the US or underserved communities, should we call them, you know, the lack of resources and fighting your way up through life and trying to work to be better than, or trying to improve or prove yourself is a battle. Culturally, when you're doing that and you may be ahead, there may be others that look down upon you or may tease you for that or may pick on you because you may be acting white or looking to get good grades or doing something for quote unquote the man. So you have these two challenges of where anxiety kicks in, right? So you're trying to figure out how to get ahead and get better out of your situation because you know you don't want to live poor and broke to some level. And then you have another side of people that are poor and broke, sometimes may not necessarily comfortable, but accepted the circumstances and not willing to put that same effort in. So now you're pulled in two directions, and that cultural imbalance and what comes along with that through education, through lifestyles, through all the other choices, and even environment with criminals and crime and things of that nature, all can escalate to compound into starting off multiple mental health issues, for lack of better terms.
Oh yeah. Where we grow up can make a big difference, can't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It can. Absolutely. Michael, what would you say?
I would just add, excellent, Lenny. I would just add the weight that comes with relationships sometimes. So you know, having successful relationships that go awry, or you know, not being able to really communicate, things break down. That's a easy trigger. And then finances, you know, especially for men. We talked about earlier with jobs and employment and all of that. You know, sometimes being at a place to where your finances are fine and you think that you know, you're able to provide and things are going well, and then there's a change in job structure, or there's a change in what you used to bring in and you know what you bring in now, or you know, that can really start to manifest itself in ways, like depression for men.
Absolutely.
Got you. So again, that's just some life stuff y'all just described. Right? So life could be a trigger all by itself. Just literally, if you go to the cultural piece of where you come from, one of the things that's really important too, and you guys alluded to the fact of you grow up in an area that is filled with either violence or other aggressive men around, of course, then that becomes the role model that you see. But then you're called to respond in a way to survive, right? It's a survival reaction or response, but then it can turn into something else completely and totally different that then becomes a major mental health problem at some other point. That's the thing. We got one question. Let me pop this one on the screen. Let's see if we can't help this young lady here.
Okay.
I hit show. Let's see, can we see it? How should you approach the situation when you think a man in your life is depressed and is showing it in an aggressive way? What does good support look like for that man? That's a great question, Tammy D. What does it look like?
That is a great question. I would say the best recourse in this situation is for that woman to consider her man. Like if this is, her husband, her boyfriend, somebody she knows well, and thinking about those things that speak peace to him, that speak, things being well, using that as a platform. If his favorite thing is to, go and sit down and have a bite at McDonald's, and that just does it for him, then maybe take him to McDonald's. Y'all have a sit down and, maybe gingerly approach what's going on. You don't want to approach him to talk about things that are going to, really make the situation even more complicated, like talking about depression at a time when he's already down or angry or aggressive or at his lowest point. You want to create a positive space to have that
picking the time. Okay, that's important. Okay, Lenny, what would you add? Because I know you were in a space of this and somebody helped you.
Absolutely. I think one, I used the word patience a moment ago in a different way, but I think it's a process, right? It's not an overnight thing. I don't think it's a single conversation. I think it's something that over time, and not saying it has to be a long time, months or anything to that nature, but just saying warming up to get to that open space where you can get to the bigger conversation is kind of subtly, making him feel comfortable or helping him recognize where he may be. As men, we may not know that we're coming across aggressively or that you see us as mad or angry. So, our response and rebuttals and how we approach situations are all around you having the time and patience to help him identify and recognize and say, hey, babe, not at the moment. Once again, it's not to put you in harm's way or make anybody more upset, but it's just, having those moments where you, once again, as Michael mentioned, he's feeling comfortable. He's in a safe space. You guys may be having pillows talk. Hell, it may be after you guys had sex, for all I know. But just at the end of the day, if you guys are comfortable and he's able to connect with you and you're able to share a moment and give him bits and pieces, over time, you'll be able to make sure that he's getting the help he needs.
Got you. So that's go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, one thing I would add to what Lenny said, because that it's positive. I can't say this enough. One of the things that speak loudest to men is support. So in those moments, where there is some depression or frustration or anger, being able to reiterate support, like I'm here for you, I'm here to support you, and not do what society kind of normally does, which is almost like kick him in while he's down. You're struggling. You don't want to add more to that. That's great stuff, Lenny.
That's good, because as women folk, sometimes I'm gonna speak for us, ladies. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I know sometimes words that we say can really hit a spot, right? Like we know the point. we got it.
Yeah.
And in order to provide the support that these fellas are talking about, we do have to be considerate. And I'm trying to think of the right word, ginger maybe, because what you don't want to do is put him on a defense and now he's shut down and won't hear anything else you have to say. So it becomes a very, very vulnerable dance, I guess, if you will, of offering and showing support and then waiting. Because I know we are the ones we want. Let's go. Like, here's the thing. There's the place. I made the call. Can we go?
Right.
Like, what we waiting for? Like, they ready. And he may need a minute to digest it, to think about it. Because Lenny, you said your first reaction is like, I'm good. I don't need no help. What am I
exactly.
Yeah. So, and if that person continued to press right then, that might have turned you the other direction. It's like, well, you stop. Like, it's too much.
And them words from women, they hit a little different.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Sure.
That's a little bit. And that's whether that's your son, your husband, your brother. I mean, that's just kind of that, you know, that gender difference in how we communicate. There's a whole lot of value and truth to a lot of that fundamental stuff that we need to be aware. We want to communicate it in a way that you can hear it and that you're able to receive it. And sometimes that does take practice. Like, we don't show up knowing that, but we need to know that we have to be aware of such to make sure we're as ginger as possible to get the point across. We got another question from Melody. Let me put that on the screen. How do you help a person, in this case, let's talk about a man who might be dealing with PTSD. How do you help them through that? That's a great question that can definitely come up, especially in traumatic times.
Absolutely. I'll start with this one and mention that, you know, the concept of triggers are big in all forms of mental health, right? And especially when we talk about PTSD, learning a person's triggers to that PTSD is super important to support that person. They may look different, you know, whether their PTSD is from grief, violence, you know, it was sexual relationships in the past. You have to deal with a person gingerly, using your word, Shana, is turning around and understanding that this person may have moments and times that, you know, these triggers are what ignites them to feel away. And if you don't take the time to understand and you know, you're not going to get them all. You're not going to know every person's every single trigger. But if you understand what are some of the things that may trigger the person and looking for ways around that to avoid them or redirect them when they are triggered, is super important.
Okay, that's important because triggers are all about, PTSD is all about the triggers. That's what happens on the other side. That's good. Michael, what would you add?
I was just going to kind of ride alongside with what Lenny is saying, being aware of what his triggers are and trying your best to walk with him through that and try to normalize it as much as possible. Yeah. Now, some of what his triggers might just be something that's natural for you as a person. So I would encourage women folk, if they know that their men folk, you know, are struggling with PTSD, to, you know, seek some professional help for that as well, because you know, there might just be some things that's beyond your ability to be able to, you know, to directly address. So
indeed. And that's one of those things, you know, PTSD is something that we need to first learn to understand because it's quite complicated. And the triggers that the gentlemen are talking about are very real. So as a loved one, if you know that your loved one is suffering from PTSD, I would say get your own education about it as well.
Absolutely.
Because you are in a better position to help someone suffering if you understand more. Because this is what happens, especially if you're in a romantic relationship with somebody who's suffering from a mental health issue, you think their behavior is personally about you. You attribute it to you because I was in the room when you did that, so it must have been about me.
Right.
And I know as women we can take stuff personal, like that was it. What? Wait. And I'm not excusing behavior. I'm just giving an explanation for why it may occur. And so if you are aware that your loved one is suffering with PTSD, that's a major mental health disorder. You got to understand that is a major one. And it requires clinical support and help to really fully address, because those wounds are typically very deep. And it really takes a lot of work to get through that. So I say get your education. NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, they have groups everywhere all over the world. Look them up, get some support for yourself if you have a loved one that's suffering with some severe mental health issue. Okay, we got another, okay, not a question, but Tammy just said maybe we have to determine if we are all in or not. Supporting someone requires commitment. If you can't handle the heat, you might need to get out the kitchen. All right, mental health challenges are real. And that is true, because I have seen some couples that cannot survive mental health issues. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. But it goes back to the education of understanding what the person is dealing with, and also maybe joining in parts of treatment with them. Because Lenny, you described that the loved one that talked to you offered or was willing to go with you for a session or two in the beginning, correct?
Yes.
And how helpful was that for you? Let's talk about that, because that's a level of support that looks different than saying, hey, you need help. So what was that like for you to have somebody who loved you say, you need help, but I'm willing to go with you, and actually do that? What difference did that make?
I think that they brought their experience from going to therapy themselves to the new experience for me, right? Because that's the gap that, needs to be bridged at some point. There's these fears, the anxiety, unknown of going to therapy and getting to that first appointment. What are they going to pry about? How comfortable should I trust them with information? Where's this information going to go after I share it with them? And having a loved one that's been through therapy, had success with therapy, and coming into that first session, bridged that gap for me to help me understand that it was okay to answer the questions, or was able to console me if there was grief conversations and I had to cry. Having a loved one there opposed to crying in front of the therapist for the first time in my first session was challenging in itself, but it made it a little bit easier.
Got you. That's beautiful. So, I mean, if that's something that you can do for the man in your life that you love, and you want him to, and you believe that help is necessary for him, offer to go with. That could be a great thing, unless it creates an additional problem. Because in some cases, that's not a great idea either. Because the other piece is, and as women, we don't need to own your process either. Like, I'm gonna make you get better. Like, so I can help you. I can take you all the way to the edge, and then I gotta let go and let you have it, right? But I can support you up to the point that you go do your own work, and you're capable. Like, men folk can do this stuff. Y'all just don't know that you can do it because they told you you weren't supposed to have to do it.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
You said about right there, Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, like, you're so capable. And I just, if y'all are just tuning in, we're helping a COVID-19 world. We're talking to men folk about men and mental health. This is a major issue because men also need the same kind of support that women need and women seek often, but men have not felt safe enough to do it. Got a comment here. Let me pop this one on the screen. This is a good one. She made the comment, something what I was just saying. Angie P says, support does not mean force. Sometimes we as women want instant change, but men may need time to accept that new change. Absolutely, Angie. It's not an overnight thing. It is a process, and we have to give them space to do that. So now when we think about other types of mental health issues that men may face, we talked a lot about depression tonight. We probably got about 10 minutes left. I want to touch a little bit on anxiety and then circle back to kind of put, some shells on all of it. What about anxiety? Because those are the two mental illnesses, or not mental illnesses, but mental health issues that most folks are familiar with, depression and anxiety. What does anxiety look like in a man? What shows up? What should we be looking for? Because we're going to probably call that something else too, but what does that look like?
I would say, clinically speaking, anxiety looks like a lot of restlessness, tension, some of the things that we're used to seeing, the sweating, the nervousness, things like that. Those are classic symptoms of anxiety. Yeah, off top of my head, that's probably the biggest thing.
Okay. Lenny, have any to add to that?
So one is a physical thing where you feel it in your body. It's one of those things that literally your heart may start racing, you get butterflies in your stomach, or you feel queasy, because something big may or may not happen. We may face, and I'll use a prime example, if you ever get pulled over in a car and your first ticket, that anxiety you have with the police officer, regardless of all the other things we won't touch base on with police right now, but just the concept of just your first police encounter of getting that speeding ticket. It's just like,
Right.
what is this going to look like on the other side? What questions are they going to ask me? What's going on? That is anxiety in itself. And at times, I don't think men recognize where we overthink. Overthinking is a symptom of anxiety as well. So, you know, going through our lives, just trying to be the alpha men and deliver and be there and supportive for our families, we go through things and put pressures on ourselves that cause anxiety, but we tend to not call it anxiety. And we may just go to the bar and get a drink or, you know, decompress in non-healthy ways at times because we don't recognize the anxiety that's happening around us.
Yep. And we're not calling it that at all.
Right. And the anxiety also, Lenny, you said it, that anticipating the worst possible scenario and being on high alert and nervous about that's
Right.
I mean, that's a classic, you know, mental that manifests itself physically, you
Right.
know, with anxiety. Absolutely.
And so when you say that as a symptom, and we circle around to the COVID-19 world that we live in,
It's
Well,
exacerbated. It's super
it's
big.
all of it.
Yep.
He's the protector, he's the provider, he's all of these things if you subscribe to that framework in your life. And what can he really do about the COVID-19?
Right. Nothing.
Absolutely.
So now the one that's supposed to protect is rendered helpless
Yeah.
in that way to directly affect that, right? So that constant, listen, so this world that we live in is literally putting him face to face with those things that he cannot control, the things that he was taught to do, like take care of your family, make sure nothing happens, feed them, make sure they're protected. And he has no control over whether that happens completely right. He can do the best he can, but he does not have full control over that. What does that do to a man? What does that do? Like what, I mean, I'm feeling like the anxiety, the worry, all of that.
Both sides of it. Anxiety, depression, the worthlessness, the jumpiness, the tension, because he doesn't know how to talk and communicate what he feels. Now he's, you know, trying to explain to his wife, or, you know, if she's saying the thing, you know, that cut him like a knife, you know, that's, big ball of emotions, big ball of emotion. And then we can't go outside and hoop, you know, or work out or go and run to get all that, you know, what we used to do and go to the barbershop and vent to the fellas.
Exactly.
Exactly.
None of that stuff is available. So
Exactly. Wow. So this world as it is right now is a trigger all by itself.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
It is in so many ways. And so we got another question. Let's take one more question and then we'll wrap up. Let's see. This is a great question Tam D asked. She says, will taking away your support make things worse for men who you are trying to support? How do you know if you are healthy enough to support someone else? Now, that's a good question.
It's a really good question.
Will taking your support away from a man make things worse? Absolutely. Especially if he's at a place to where he's open and vulnerable enough to start to share what it is he's going through, right? So we talked about that. That's counterintuitive for us as men because we've been taught, you know, be a man, tough it out, don't let him see you sweat, you know, hold it down always. So yeah, if he gets to a point to where he feels like you are my rock, you are my support, and then that goes away, that can be devastating for men. Absolutely.
That could be.
And then the second part of that question is excellent. So Dr. Lewis said earlier the importance of education. I think right there says the most. So one, we have to be educated on what this actually looks like, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever the mental health challenges or the mental illness. But we also have to know that about ourselves. What is it that we can deal with? What are we ready to deal with? What, you know, are we not quite ready to deal with? And how, you know, those triggers might kind of conflict with, you know, some of the things that, you know, the man might be going through. One thing I would say along the education lines is it's important for us to really know what's going on with mental health because we casually play around with mental health diagnoses. You might have said, you might hear people say, that's just my OCD or that's my PTSD kicking in. You know, before we play around with diagnoses and minimize it, then you might miss what's really going on. You know, your man might really be struggling with PTSD. And you might not be in a position, you know, to support him the way he needs it. But if you just play around, and, oh, we all got PTSD, or we all, you know, exposed, and, you know, that's not supporting him the way he needs, or taking away some of the support he needs, depending on how that's
right. It's minimizing what's actually happening. And Lenny, what would you say to that second piece? How do you know if you're healthy enough to support someone else? Because you had a support person. What were the characteristics or traits that she possessed that really made her support very helpful for you?
So it's important that we don't pour from an empty glass, right? For all of us, you know, in general. Yeah. So, you know, we sit on the other side of this, and what the support looked like for me, you know, she had her own weight and barriers to carry as well. She lost her mom a year before that. So, you know, her understanding, her grief, things of that nature also gave me the flexibility of knowing that it was relatable. It was coming from a space that was relatable. So her well-being was super important to me, but I was comfortable in the conversations and the way the direction it was going in, because the experiences were so relatable that it made it easier to identify that she was able to overcome that. But for those that aren't able to overcome their challenges, or see that they may have some challenges, I recommend, you know, if you're able to identify that and pose such a great question, you know, I would say begin to speak to a therapist yourself, and they can help you navigate both sides of it, for yourself as well as for the man that you're trying to support.
I was thinking the same thing, because my thought was, if you question it, then you could possibly needing your own help right now.
Right.
Because it is a heavy weight to carry someone else's and or carry it with them, right? And if you need support yourself, get it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Get it.
Right.
Get it, and get it immediately. Get it. Wow, this is so good. Okay, so we're almost out of time. It goes by so fast. I have a few other questions in queue, but let me I'll see if I can come back to some of those, but I want to make sure we touch on a few of these other things before we go. So if you have folks who are listening right now, they have a man in their life who is struggling and they are really concerned about him, the very first thing that you would say they do is what? I'm concerned. They like, I know something is wrong. What's the first thing they need to do? How can they help first?
Okay, one of the first things they could do is, once again, the comfort level. Get into a comfortable space. If he likes fishing, if he likes watching a ball game, unfortunately, sports isn't there. But, you know, if there's a channel or a TV show or a moment in time that you know is a comfort zone, finding that comfort zone and space and starting out with the conversation. Keyword is start. You know, you're not going to finish the conversation on this first interaction and getting off the ground. We call it the cold start problem, right? It's like, how do you get someone that's cold, super cold, to an idea and understanding, to warming them up a little bit? And you want to get this cold person to a place where they're a little bit warmer than they were when you started, but they don't have to be hot and ready to go right away. So that would be my recommendation, is warm them up a little bit.
And see, Lenny, you just said something that's going to mess up all the women on the line if they like me. You said we're not going to finish it in this first conversation. See, we're trying to figure it all out right now. Ain't nobody trying to come back a second and third and fourth time. Like, we here now. Let's just go and get to the end. So you're talking about dosing it a little bit at a time. All right. You're talking about dosing it. I got you. Mike, what would you say? First thing.
First thing is I guess, like Lenny, I'm gonna have to steal his, creating an atmosphere to where it's not hostile. It's not adding to it. Trying to approach an issue or trying to force something out of somebody at a time when it's difficult, it's going to blow up, right? So being able to have a platform where, you're not unintentionally adding to the frustration is fine. Just creating a safe space, a positive space to be able to have the conversation.
That's good. Very, very good. And so one of the things I know for you, Lenny, this whole journey for you of going through your own mental health, seeking services for mental health, has taken you on an entire career path. Absolutely. So the value of getting therapy can turn into something pretty amazing. Can you share with us what it's created or done for you in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I shared my journey and what I went through with my mom in 2008. And a few years later, 7 years later to be exact, in 2015, my brother lost his best friend to gun violence here in New York City. The guy was really popular. It was a rapper, about to come out with his first album with people like Puffy and French Montana. And it was a big publicized murder. And my brother was living in Ohio and I was here in New York. So literally I struggled with helping him get the help that I knew he needed and that I experienced myself when I dealt with grief. So that's where, as you mentioned, Dr. Lewis, it's just like I turned around and I said, I'm a problem solver. The alpha male in me came about. I was in tech 10 years prior and I said, I'm going to use technology to help bridge the gap for communities of color with mental health solutions. So I built a directory and a mental health technology platform called True Circle that allows people a directory of over 3,000, 4,000 mental health professionals of color on our platform that you can search throughout the nation to find a therapist of color. And then we also work with mental health professionals to help them use our technology for video chat so they can see more clients and connect with more clients, which is prevalent now more than ever. With the pandemic and COVID-19, it's such a big deal. We help with marketing because we know that clinicians are known to help the people, and that's where they pour their hearts into. So doing websites and doing technology is not their forte. So we come in as a company to fill that spectrum, build great relationships, and bridge that gap for communities of color.
I love it. And you'll see scrolling at the bottom is all the ways to get in contact with Mr. Carter, mytruecircle.com. And what's really funny is that's how I met Lenny. Was I reached out because I saw mytruecircle.com and I was looking for a new platform for virtual telehealth therapy at the beginning of COVID-19. And when you put in there, you want to know more, you get the creator and owner on the phone. I was like, oh, this is cool. And
Nice.
we had a vibe and we just started talking. And he shared his story. And I was like, Lenny, I need your voice. Like, I need your story in this virtual summit. And he was like, absolutely, yes. Y'all, I'm not afraid to ask. All y'all can tell me is yes or no, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad he said yes. So it's a wonderful platform for clinicians, as well as a place if you're seeking a therapist, because a lot of times people don't even know where to begin. And I get that often. Mental side, I don't even know where to start. Like who would I call? Where would I go? I don't know what that looks like. And people look at therapy like it's what's on television. And half the time that's so fake. It just drives me. I need my own job.
That's not it. That's not it.
Exactly. Wow.
Not that, but if you have so mytruecircle.com is where they can find the entire database that you have of clinicians all across the country, correct?
Absolutely, yes. Yep, every state across the nation.
Every state. Listen, so it doesn't matter where you're watching this from. You can go to mytruecircle.com. That is a valuable resource for you right now. If you're looking for a therapist to help the man in your life, that's a great place to start, no matter where you are, and other ways to connect to Lenny. I think that's awesome. That's a great testimony to just how powerful therapy is. And it made such an impact on you. You wanted to make certain that other people had access to it. So I applaud you for the effort that it had to take, because I know it's a beautiful platform, Lenny. I love it. Like love it.
Thank you.
So you did an amazing job. So kudos to you for that. So nobody has an excuse tonight to say, well, I live in Kentucky and I don't know where to go. My.com. No E. Somebody type it in the chat for me. I know someone's going to follow the instructions and you're going to type it in the chat. So it'll be there as well too. Folks can just click on it. mytruecircle.com. That is a great resource. I love that. And so, Michael, for you, and I know you have a lot of unique ways that you also reach men in different places like that. Tell us a little bit about some of those things that you do and how folks can reach you.
Well, so I know that for us, especially African American males, the barbershop is a sanctuary for us, right? That's where we typically, let our hair down. So what I've tried to do is use that as a platform to be able, especially pre-COVID-19, to be able to use that as a platform to get us to have those conversations So we had started this thing called Chopping It Up, and I try to go to the barbershop, during live hours, where people are actually there interacting and just having that conversation. We're talking anyway, so it's been a successful platform. Aside from that, though, I really try to reach the clients where they are. And so right now, of course, I'm doing a lot of telehealth, but in the office, I try to sometimes get outside the office. I have a lot of adolescent male clients along with adult male clients, and sometimes, they just want to be able to feel comfortable. And so as long as I'm not violating any kind of confidentiality and they're fine with it, sometimes we do stuff like that. Like, we get out and we toss the football, or we have that, we have that type of interaction, because sometimes that's what's lacking, and that's supporting their treatment. So we do those things. Just finding ways. I like to find ways that are different, but that connect more to the person I'm working with. And so if it's legit and if it's not violating confidentiality, and they're okay with it, we can do it. I'm all about let me connect with you where you are. That's what therapy really is. What Dr. Lewis was saying, not the stuff on TV, laying across a lounge chair and with a therapist doodling and not really paying attention.
And so here's the thing, and this is what I love about what Mike is doing for menfolk, is because sometimes sitting across from a stranger and having a conversation could be intimidating, could be something that doesn't feel normal. And I don't know you, like I'm going to tell you all this stuff. Yeah. I mean, even for a young man, right? Because you do a lot of work with young men, but going out and playing basketball, being at a barbershop, these are comfortable places that you can easily infuse some very, very important lessons. So I love that you do that work. I'm a fan of all of it. And I definitely think it's important for folks to understand that therapy can look different in some ways. Like there's different ways to seek help. So not to be afraid to find different routes to seek help. Sometimes self-help books are the first place people feel safe going. So you can do that. Michael has a book I want him to talk about in a second as well that can be helpful. Right. Sometimes if you go to the barbershop and there is a good conversation that's happening, you're going to jump in. Even Dr. Whitaker has done that as a female. She's gone into the barbershops and had conversations about postpartum and with their wives. And the men were like going wild, like I had no clue that was a real thing, right? Yeah. And so going to safe places to have, and it's what Lenny described, going to a place that's calm, that's safe, that he feels unthreatened. He's more likely to hear what you have to say. So those things do exist in a clinical way as well as other ways and forms too. So, but Michael, talk about the book that you have that you've been using to help men as well.
Okay, so one of the things in therapy that's kind of a tenet is writing. A lot of us don't write, in addition to not talking, but writing can be a little bit easier because outside the therapy environment, it gives you an opportunity to kind of do the homework. And then when you come back, you have something to share. So for me, I wanted to find a way to have the conversation, to have men have the conversation without it being so intrusive, and make them feel comfortable. So I created it's almost a guided journal, but it's called a guided memento because what it does is it asks some of those tough questions that we want to talk about that maybe we never really get a chance to talk about. And you put it down on paper. And so you use that as a platform to be able to express it, but it also doubles as a memento. So it gives you an opportunity to pass on some of what you feel and what you thought and what your core values are and just, where you are to maybe your children, maybe your spouse, or maybe your great grandchildren may have an opportunity to know what it was that their great grandfather thought about, what he felt about this, that, or the other. So just finding a way to bridge the connection between us men folks, since we're not talking about things all the time, but also making it accessible and meaningful to others so that they can know a little bit about, the men in their lives.
It's a beautiful thing. I happen to own a copy and give it to my husband. I love it because it allows me to share things and think about things that they may not normally think about, but that are highly valuable lessons that can be passed down through generations of boys in their family, or even the girls. Obviously, we have a lot to learn from men in our life as well, too. So I appreciate very much. And I recommend that to lots of my male clients to grab a copy because it starts the conversation and continues it. So they can find that, Michael, where can they find that book?
They can find it on Amazon under my name, Michael Dangerfield. It's Reflections of a Man, Guide Memento. You can find it on my website also. You see it scrolling, www.allintherapy.net. And if you reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, I'll find a way to get a copy of it to you that way too.
Very, very good. Well, listen, guys, I am so grateful for the two of you this evening. If this conversation helped you put it in the chat box, give them some thumbs up, high fives, because it takes men who are willing to be vulnerable, to be authentic and genuine, to have a conversation that's real. Thank you, Lenny, for sharing your testimony, your story. There's so much growth and value in that. One of the things that I have been really pleased about in my own practice, I normally work with women, but in the last, I would say 6 months, I've had more men that have been calling, and I've said yes, which, I don't take most of my practice is women, but I have a few men, but I'm talking about men who are ready to do amazing work.
That's
ready.
Good. That's good.
And I've had wives call me and say, girl, thank you.
Yeah.
I know what you're doing. Or deny who you are, what you're talking about. But shoot, I don't know what you're doing, but it is amazing. And you have help. So know that there's no shame in getting help. Know that you actually are able to be a better man if you are able to function fully in who you actually are, without trying to hide behind depression or hiding behind anxiety, because eventually what you hide behind is going to come forward. It's going to show itself. It manifests whether you want it to or not. And so the message here tonight is get the help, encourage him, find a safe place. Like these brothers gave y'all that multiple times. Find a safe place. Baby steps, ladies. Don't shove it down his throat. Give him some time. Feed them a little bit, walk away, let them marinate on it, come back. Like that's a lot for us, y'all. But thank y'all for telling us that, because we needed to hear that, because we be ready to get to the end real fast. So excellent, great session of this great conversation. So they're saying kudos. Y'all done an amazing job. So thank you so much for being here. Now, this is just day 2, y'all. We got 3 more days of this conference tonight. So I'm going to bring Dr. Whitaker back, but y'all two don't leave. I'm going to pop y'all back down and bring Dr. Whitaker, and we'll chat for just a second off air, okay? So give me just a second and bring her back.
Okay.
Yeah. There I am. Technology is playing with me in the back office, y'all. So tonight is day 3. I'm Dr. Rochelle Whitaker, Paige and Dr. Rochelle Whitaker. Okay. Let me get her back up here so we can close this out this evening. We had a great conversation tonight. It was really, 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 really good. Dr. Rochelle, was that good?
It was awesome. It was excellent.
Oh, that was so good. I'm so grateful.
Excellent.
So grateful. So what we got the rest of the week? Like that was a good, like I'm full. The men folk, we know what to do now, y'all. We're going to work on it. The ladies got our homework assignments.
I don't know. I almost feel like we need to do another session with them, because I'm like, I think we just tapped on it. We didn't even get to the core of it.
I know. It's so much. But so what else we got coming up the rest of the week, Dr. Whitaker?
So tomorrow we have Dr. Robinson talking about grief, anxiety, and depression, which we know people are experiencing in droves. And then we have Dr. Walker on Thursday talking about relationships, parenting. And we know, right, this is a trying time for married couples working together in the home, doing everything, on top of each other right now. And then on Friday, we have Dr. Tran and Dr. O'Neill talking about substance abuse, because we know that substance abuse, for those who have who are predisposed, those numbers are have increased for them. And so there's some concern about substance abuse, the numbers increasing, and people's use of substance abuse to self-medicate is on the rise. And so the rest of the week is going to be great. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what the speakers will share with us and the solutions they will offer, right? That's the biggest thing. We need solutions. We have a lot of discussions, but we don't have a lot of solutions. So I thank Lenny and Michael for, giving us some tips that we can take away and actually apply.
Absolutely. This is great stuff. I love this. Folks are enjoying it. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Be sure to share this with somebody in your timeline. Put it on your Facebook or wherever you are and people are watching. They need this conversation. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow for another episode of Help in a COVID-19 World, Healing Everyday Life Problems. I'm Dr. Shana signing off, and
Dr. Whitaker. Y'all have a good night.
All right. Good night, y'all.